Okay, nothing special today, so far anyway. I spent a lot of time making preforms, so that's what I'm going to be showing right now. Here's the preform. I need a lot of them this size, and to get one of this size I need a pretty large spall to guarantee this size. I can get this size from a smaller flake or spall, but it's not guaranteed. So guaranteed means like 80% or above success. That's about as best that you can plan on. About the best that you can plan on. For me anyway. So to get 80% success rate, it's got to be pretty large compared to the final product. Okay. So this is pretty good stuff. Should be able to do this quickly. Should. We'll see. Not too much of a curve in it. It's a good spall. And the material is just under the cortex, so theoretically everything should go okay. Very windy today, so maybe you'll hear some of that in the background. Little bird point spall. Some little cruddies. Another bird point spall. Okay, let's see. What do I do from here? From here, it's thin enough to do indirect percussion only. Now, sometimes if I don't desperately need these preforms, if it turns out that this is going to be larger than I expected, I'll just switch it out and use something else, another spall to create the preform, and then make something bigger out of the original spall, out of the first spall. You know what I mean? But since I do desperately need that particular preform size to finish up some side projects, I do need to continue, although I could probably get something a little bit bigger out of it. That's one thing about making things to spec. You got to store up more material because there's more waste. Because you got to guarantee yourself that you're going to have a piece large enough for your spec piece. Spec just means specifications. You have a specification that the customer wants, right? To get that size guaranteed, 80% or above. You need to use a range of spall sizes. Excuse me. It's not like you can cut them to size and slab them out. Not like I can. I mean, you can do it that way. It's more efficient that way. But if you're not slabbing, you're going to have spalls of different sizes. And some of those are going to be big spalls that are going to be whittled down to size because you have to have the spec. And you have to have a certain number. You can't save those for something else. Like I was saying before, if it turns out to be a really good spall with a really good preform from it that's larger than what you need, you can't just say, I'm going to use it for something else, unless you don't need it. But if you do need it, you've got to sacrifice the material. Okay, that's why I'm saying it requires more material for these spec jobs. Now, I knew that in the past, but I thought material was going to be easy to get because it was before. Nowadays, for some reason, material material's not easy to get. So either a lot of people are ordering it, or the quality is just going down because suppliers cannot be spending a lot of time and money on getting the best stuff these days. All the expenses are going up. So they have to make do with what they got. Make do with what they got. The suppliers. And then the people buying have to make do with what they got too. Okay? So it seems like it's getting harder and harder to get good stuff. But maybe not. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, I have found that if you're making a lot of points to a certain specification, you're going to use more material than you normally would if you just go with the flow. You know? And back in the day, same thing. They didn't use smaller preforms than this, right? If they're using large atlatl dart points or knives, they had to have a certain size, a big size, and they couldn't just say, "Oh, these are good arrow point spalls," because they didn't have arrow points, or they weren't making them. Okay, so there's a lot of waste, even back in the day. Now, with some point styles, there's a variation. There's a wide range of sizes for that particular point. So that means, I think, they were being a little bit more efficient with their material. I think. That's just a hypothesis. If there's a range in sizes, they were being a little more efficient with both resharpening and with the initial sizes of the pieces. You know, resharpening will change the size, make it smaller, and just going with the flow, this was the ideal form. Since this preform seems to be a little bit bigger, or this biface seems to be a little bit bigger, maybe they would make a bigger knife or a bigger atlatl dart point. You know, and then as it whittles down, it'll get to this size, and they'll whittle it down by resharpening even further. Okay, so they weren't too worried about, they may have not been too worried about the size. But if you have to be worried about the size, and it has to be the spec, there is a lot of waste by comparison. Okay. One of the reasons why I'm not doing side projects anymore, I just can't be dealing with a lot of inventory, both in terms of space and the investment. And there's also time. If you got projects on the side, you got to fit those in somewhere, and usually it takes away from your primary income. It takes away from your primary income, because you could be doing your primary stuff first. I mean, you could be doing your primary stuff during those time periods that you're working on the side stuff, if you know what I mean. Okay. Anyway, sometimes side stuff is more lucrative, but I have found that it's not with flint knapping. Even if you're charging more on the side, it's still not lucrative in the same way, because of like I said, higher investment, more inventory, which means you got to store it somewhere. Storage, if you have to store it in a storage unit, of course, the larger the unit, the more the cost. Also, if you're if you're storing it outside of your house or whatever, not only are you taking up space for that something else could be in, you have to sort through, dig out stuff that's getting buried by leaves or whatever. Sometimes pets will dig around in your stash and you've got to reorganize or whatever. It just takes time, and time is money. Okay, the more inventory you have, the more time you're spending with it, the more money you could be making doing something else. Okay, that's enough of that discussion. Just rambling while I do this. All right, so yeah, plenty of room. Now, one thing about having lots of room, you tend to think, oh, this is going to be kind of easy, and you may be tempted to go really fast. You got to resist that, because there's no shortcuts. No matter how easy it looks, it's never easy. And the reason is because of the risk of the less you pay attention, the riskier it gets. And when you're thinking it's easy, human nature tends to ease up on the focus. You're not as focused. There's not as an intense desire to make sure everything is right. But you'll run into problems when that happens. There's no shortcuts. No easies. You can do it faster. As time goes on, you'll get faster and faster. But it never really gets that much easier. It gets a little more predictable. But your subconscious takes over the difficulty part. And you can still feel it if you think about it. But since the subconscious is doing it, mostly, you don't feel it as much. But when you start thinking about the difficulty, you can feel that it's still there. And it'll rear its ugly head when you hit somewhere a little bit too hard or whatever, and it breaks. You'll become conscious of the risk the hard way. All right, so let's see. Yeah. So with preforms and this kind of thing, you just got to make sure it's regular when you're doing it to spec. Regularize everything. It'll give you a way to pace yourself. I could be just going for the final dimensions really fast and try to get it done that way. Just go straight for the final dimensions really fast. But I find it's just much easier overall in the long run too. To just keep it regular as you're reducing it for spec work. For just normal stuff, for expediency, when you don't have much time and you want to make something, let's say you're going on a hunting trip and you want a knife, but you've got like one more night before you go, just make something expedient. You don't want to spend all day. That's the way most flint knappers in the past would make their stuff, in my opinion, they would make it expediently. You got some time here and there. It's not that much time because everything is, back in the day, everything is hurry, hurry, hurry. You know? People are hungry. People are cold. People are needing other things besides arrowheads. So whenever you have some time, you got to use it wisely. And even if you have to make something that looks a little bit cruddy, at least you got it done within that allotted period of time, you know, within daylight hours or whatever. That's the way I think most of them were made. Now today we have the luxury of taking our time with everything. Most of us anyway. Some of us are still living that way where everything is rush, rush, rush. There's not enough money. We're working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, whatever the case may be. I know how that is too. So not everybody has plenty of time these days, I guess. But I think we have more time than they used to have. Okay. So yeah, I thought I had a lot of time for these side projects, or enough, let's say not a lot, but enough time for these side projects. And I do spend some time on them, but I'm finding that I don't have time for these. I got to do everything expediently. I really don't have time to do everything super carefully. I've got a lot of other things I want to do besides flint knapping. Okay, let's see. Critical hit here. Let's see. Yeah. Critical hit. You see that little deposit of steel there? Those worry me when it does that, because it could have cracks in there now, and that vital, crucial hit now has a possibility of incipient cracks, which will mess up the next strike. But we'll see what happens. Did it mess it up? No. Fortunately, it did not mess it up. And what that means is, sometimes it did have it did crack a little bit right there, because I had to hit it really, really hard. Because I hit this one hard, it didn't go, so I had to hit this really hard, and it did put a crack in it, but this one here on this side didn't open up, and there's no cracking on that side, and there's no crushing and stuff. But as luck would have it, there is a crack on this side. So same thing, basically the same thing, same result, because I do have to take that edge back now. What that means is I got to remove some of the edge to get rid of that crack. So it starts getting close. See, these got to be, the ones I'm making have to be to the correct weight as well. Not just the right size, but they have to be the correct weight. So they got to be the same thickness, same size, same weight. So this has to be reduced very carefully. You can get into the habit of doing that for everything you make, which probably is logically the best way to do it. But even so, I don't think very many people actually do these side projects or commission work, even though there is a logical strategy for doing them, and they should be able to be done without much difficulty. But there is still difficulty. Even if you take your time, get everything right, make perfect preforms, even the guys that do that, still, I haven't really encountered anyone that does commission work for very long. They do it for a little while and they say, "Oh, this is not good." And I'm in the same boat. I said, "Yeah, this is not good." It's not that I don't want to do it. It's just it doesn't work out very well. All right. And you got to control the anxiety too. If you start to sweat a lot, when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, you'll have trouble with commission work. But if anybody out there does commission work and does anything that anyone asks, and you don't have enough work, I'll send some people over to you. How's that? You want some commission work, and you're not busy, and you want to be busy, just send me an email. You'll get busy. Okay, seriously. If you want the work, I can show you, or I can direct you to some work for sure. Okay. Yeah, see those? They look good, they look satisfying on video, but the anxiety level is intense, very intense for those. Because I could have broken the whole thing in half. So that the anxiety is like in your face. But it looks satisfying on video if you're not actually doing it. Is it satisfying for me? Well, I'm always seeing something that could have been better, so it's a mixed bag. Yes and no. It is satisfying that I did not break it, but it's not going to be like, ooh, that was perfect. I see it didn't fan out enough. It didn't fan out quite enough to get that little bit of step fracturing. And all it needed was like a 0.5 millimeter more and it would pop that out, but no, didn't do it. Those produce anxiety too, those little damage control attempts. I can already feel the temperature start to increase. But yeah, I'm not going to go any thinner than that, right? Not for the preform anyway. Yeah, I don't need to go thinner than that. But I do need to reduce the outside. But I'm going to cut the video there. My camera's full. I've got lots of videos on the camera right now. But yeah, all I got to do now is take a bunch off the base and I've got pretty much a preform that I'll put away. I'll leave it a little bit larger. So I've already done the edge work as far as the shape. Not the sharpening, but the shape, the edge work on the shape, except for the base. I'm going to take off some of that base, but I'm going to cut it short here because I'm running out of space on the camera. All right. There you go.